Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the meet and greet show with me, Aisha Khan, the Bush and Beyond edition. I am at the largest national park in Kenya. Any guesses yet? I am at Tsavo National Park to meet a phenomenal lady who fights for the rights of animals and wildlife conservation. She is an animal lover and a fighter indeed.
Rabia Hawa is an honorary warden with the Kenya Wildlife Service. She is passionate about conservation and she is an animal lover. She is the founder of Ulinzi Africa Foundation and Walk with Rangers initiative. She also contributed significantly to the national judicial dialogues held in Amboseli aimed at refining the amendments to the then proposed Wildlife Bill of Kenya and participated in the Conservation with Civil Society hosted by President Barack Obama in 2015. She was also Muslim Woman of the Year in 2016, courtesy of the Al Muslima Top 30 Under 40 Muslim Women in Kenya.
Hey little bird, so way up high, light up the sky with your colored design. Tell me who made you and I, me to walk and you to fly. The little bird said, that's my Lord. The little bird said, that's my Lord. The little bird said, that's my Lord, Allah the Creator.
Because we had to run and cut the interview short. We haven't even started because the elephant's mother thinks the child is a threat. So we need to look for another location.
I'm in the bush somewhere. I don't know where I am, but I'm just in the middle of Tsavo with Rabia Hawa. We were almost going to get attacked. Rabia, why did the elephant react that way?
So I'm sure you noticed that she had a young baby with her.
Yeah.
And that's really just a defense mechanism. Elephants are very protective of their young, but historically in the Tsavo conservation area, they've been subject to a lot of poaching by people. And in around, I think it was the 60s, there was a lot of poaching to the point where elephants would have been recorded to be shot by poachers in full view of tourists. And they wouldn't just shoot one or two, they would put down a whole entire herd. So about 60 elephants at one time or 70 at one time. At that time we had really big herds of elephant. And elephants have a way of communicating with each other. Even when they're sort of shot and they're injured and they're falling down, they have rumbles that are not audible to the human ear, but that travel really long distances. And so other elephant herds must have heard those rumbles and passed on the message to future generations. And so they are very, very not so comfortable around people. But that's just because they identify us as an immediate threat, and especially to their children.
So if we did not run away, what would happen to us? In how many seconds?
I don't think we would have been sitting here for one.
Oh my.
But it would have taken between 1.5 to 3 minutes for that elephant to reach us from the distance it was.
Well, we got saved.
Alhamdulillah.
Who is Rabia Hawa?
Just a simple person trying to make a difference.
You are an animal conservationist. Tell me about your journey into animal conservation, and were you always fascinated about animals?
I was ever since a young age, largely because of my parents, particularly my dad, who made sure that instead of watching cartoons, we were watching wildlife documentaries. And so I grew up learning a lot about wildlife, and it was really interesting to learn about their mannerisms, their family units, how they build their homes. And I sort of felt a sense of responsibility from a very young age to protect what we have, and also to prevent them from being unnecessarily harmed by people. It wasn't always easy to get into wildlife conservation because I didn't have 5 years of experience or a PhD. And so I started volunteering and kind of worked my way into the field slowly.
Rabia, interestingly enough, you started your career off in radio, in the media. Tell me about that phase, how you joined media and how you ended up here exactly.
So when I finished high school, some of my friends and I were just planning a luncheon, and they happened to be doing radio. There was sort of a public call on a smaller radio station for people to go and do voice tests, and they were doing that. I didn't know that's what they were doing, and so I happened to find myself in an office waiting for them. And then a lady walked up to me and she said, "You can't just sit around here waiting, you have to read this script." And I said, "Okay, where do I read it?" And so I read it, and the following Saturday I was put on air and sort of trained into radio, and I completed 13 years in radio.
That's at East FM?
That was on Sound Asia, East FM, XFM. And then after that I sort of ventured into television, and then also simultaneously was writing in the Star newspaper, which is what I found created a lot of changes for wildlife, because I was reporting on elephant poaching. And that's when really the public movement started, and that's when a lot of other media houses started really highlighting the poaching issue. But I have to say that I don't regret leaving the media. I think I did my part, and I do regret being on radio, because I didn't realize at the time that, you know, when you're playing music for people, you don't really think about it. And when you spend more time here and you kind of immerse yourself in almost the silence of the wilderness and the sights and sounds of the wilderness, you come to realize that music is really disruptive to your body. It's really disruptive to your mind and your normal functions. And I actually haven't ever listened to music since I left, and I don't regret that, but I do regret playing it for people, because I just wish I hadn't done that. But now that I've realized that, I will never do it again, inshallah.
What was that one turning point in your life? You know, you're a media personality and you decide, this is what I want, animal conservation. Tell me about that turning point.
So while I was working in the media, again, because I was very passionate about wildlife and conservation, I tried to highlight conservation issues, organizations, conservationists on my show, similar to what you're doing now, because I felt like they needed support, and people needed to know about what's happening in the field. But nothing could have prepared me really for my first field visit, which I was invited to by a small organization. And it was to the Masai Mara. I hadn't been to the Mara for a long time. So for me it was like, okay, this is an opportunity. And within 15 minutes, a ranger car drove into our camp, and all the rangers were jumping in and saying, "Twende twende kuna risasi meskika." And I'm like, okay, why are we going to where there's gunshots? But then everyone jumped into the car, and I didn't want to be left behind with all the lions and buffaloes. And so I hopped into the car with them, and we walked into a place called Dupoto Forest. And just about 10 minutes into our walk, I saw my first poached elephant, and she was a young elephant, about maybe 5 years old, and her tusks had been cut off her body, and that really shook me. I couldn't understand it almost. It was very difficult to comprehend, and really, really hard for me to accept that something like this was still happening and Kenyans don't know. So that's when I then moved into the journey of trying to bring poaching to the public eye by writing in the Star newspaper, but then also by highlighting it on my shows on radio, and also by doing segments on television, and trying to really push the message out there that this is a reality and it's happening and it needs to stop. So that's what really was my turning point, and I would never look back.
Wow. Well, now you're in the bush, your journey into the bush. What were some of the challenges that you came across? Because you were leading a very normal life just at home in this city, and here you are in a bush.
I think this has become my normal now. It took some time, but once I got used to sort of bucket baths and going into the bush to, you know, do your business, it just became easy. It's just a part of everyday life, and I like it because it almost humbled me in a way. Like when I was living in the city, it was almost chaos all the time. You know, there's noises from the road, there's noises from the shopping center, and there's just noise everywhere. And when you come here, you find that your heart really settles, and I get a lot of peace when I'm here, and I'm able to focus on myself. I'm able to focus on the important things in life, and I'm not so stressed all the time. So this has become my normal. Now I find when I go back to Nairobi, I can't hack it. I mean, I'm there for 2 weeks and already I've had enough.
You're always next to nature. Has it increased your spirituality?
Yeah, most definitely. I think being here, you are so connected to everything that Allah has created, and it's so difficult to look at like elephants, like what we saw earlier. It's so difficult to look at elephants and not try and think about how amazing Allah's creation.
You just want to go and sit there. I noticed that, and you even dragged me along, and we went and were sitting and looking at the elephant.
Yeah, and like you saw how the mother is so protective of her child, and
We almost got attacked.
well, almost. But you see, but the thing is, like, people would see that as, oh, an elephant almost attacked me. But for me, I really respect the elephant for that, and I'm so humbled by Allah's creation. Like, they can't speak, they can't they can't communicate with us, and so instead of just charging us, she started flapping her ears, which is like a sign, like, if you are trying to threaten my baby, I will charge you. And I think that there's almost like a respect of space happening between them and us. But I really, like, one of the animals that I found in the bush that has really made me think a lot about how amazing Allah's creations are snakes, because a lot of people will just find them and kill them, but you find that this is an animal, like, Allah hasn't given it legs, hasn't given it a voice to scream and shout when somebody is about to step on it, and the only thing that it has really to protect itself and defend itself is its teeth, its fangs. Some are venomous, some are non-venomous, and even the ones that are really poisonous, they can only make enough venom to feed themselves for that week. Snakes don't have a digestive system like ours either. So if they eat a mouse, for example, it'll take about 4 days to a week for it to fully digest. And so if he bites a human being to protect himself, he knows that he's going to stay hungry for a long time. So he has a decision to make. Do I remove my poison or not? And so I find that just that fact has really made me contemplate everything that I see, from the leaves on the trees to the grass to every animal, and it really has improved my spirituality, and I'm really thankful for that.
Wow. As Muslims, we pray 5 times a day. Half of your life is spent here in the bush. Half of the time, I suppose, you're busy on patrol. When do you pray? Do you actually pray?
Yeah.
Where?
Just wherever we are. So if we're in the middle of a patrol, even if we're tracking poachers, we just stop at Dhuhr time or Asr time, make our wudu, or if we don't have water, we just do tayammum and we pray there in the bush. Just find a sandy spot.
Yeah.
And sometimes I carry like a small like a travel musalla.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't have it, so we just like clear the ground and we just pray there.
Wow. That's amazing. Totally blew me away. And let's talk about victimization. Here you are, you're a Muslim woman. Has anyone ever victimized you for choosing to spend half of your life in the bush?
I'm not sure if victimizing is the right word, but criticizing definitely. A lot of people obviously are not happy with it. They don't really understand it.
Why?
I'm not sure why. I think it's more of a culture thing where people have certain cultural values or beliefs that they then almost transcend into religion. But there's nothing in Islam that stops me from protecting wildlife.
True.
There's nothing in Islam that prevents you from working with men. It's not like we're holding hands and walking in the bush. You know, we really respect each other, and we're like a family out here. And I have to say that the one who's been criticized the most has been my dad, but he's also been my biggest support system, and he really trusts me, and I've always valued the fact that he trusts me enough to let me do what I do, and so I would never do anything to detriment that.
Wow. You are newly married. Congratulations on that, because when I met
Jazakallah.
you, you aren't.
Yeah.
You are in a very different space. Now, is your partner a bushman, just like you?
My husband
Yes, your
is
husband.
not a bushman, he's a city slicker.
Wow.
But he really loves wildlife, and he really enjoys the outdoors, and so Atafika tu.
Wow. We will be taking a short break, so do not move a muscle. As in the next segment, we will get to know more about Rabia Hawa's foundation, the Ulinzi Africa Foundation, and her Walk with Rangers initiative.
Everything I own.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Hey alligator, laying so still, who's your maker? By who's
Welcome back to the show. I am at the beautiful and magnificent Tsavo Conservancy with, of course, the lovely Rabia Hawa. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Aisha.
Rabia, what is the life of a ranger like?
Difficult and challenging, but very rewarding. When you save animals, you've really made a difference, and that just fills you up with joy.
Take me through the nitty-gritties of what exactly a ranger does, from morning to night.
So a typical day would start early in the morning, so after Fajr, for example. You get up, you have a very heavy breakfast, so we don't normally have lunch, just have a very heavy meal in the morning.
What's your heavy meal in the morning?
Usually ugali and beans, or rice and pojo. And and then it's just walking from then on, from about 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning all the way until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we come back to camp, we'll have a bit of tea, and then we have our heavy meal in the evening, which is our dinner. But again, in the middle of tracking, anything could happen. So we could be tracking for an hour, for example, or 3 hours, and then you come across footsteps. And so when you find the footprints, you have to follow them. And sometimes that can take you into the next day. So you'll sleep in the bush, and then you wake up the next day and continue tracking, because you have to find those people.
Wow. And have you ever been attacked yourself?
Attacked? Not really, but I've been chased by hyena and I've been chased by elephant before.
Wow. Rabia, you are the founder of Ulinzi Africa Foundation and also have the initiative of the Walk with Rangers. That is a combination of animal conservation. At the same time, you're looking into the interests of the rangers. Tell me more about it.
So I launched Ulinzi Africa Foundation in 2014, and we are East Africa's first non-profit that focuses on rangers' welfare, empowerment and facilitation. And I started it for two reasons. One was because I noticed a gap in the system in terms of no one was really focusing on rangers. Everyone was sort of talking about lions or elephants or rhinos, and no one was talking about rangers, and yet they're the ones who are the reason for their protection and their conservation effectively. So I wanted to do more for rangers, because after living and working with them for more than 10 years, I saw the conditions some of them were living in, and just wanted to change that situation for them. So we're slowly trying to improve things just within our capacity. And obviously when we increase capacity, then we can do more, God willing. And the second reason was because I recognized that there were some areas of Kenya where there isn't a lot of conservation attention, if any at all. And one of those areas in particular is the Tana River ecosystem, which is abundant in wildlife but also thriving in poaching. And yet there are no conservation groups that are effectively working to stop that. And so at the moment, through Ulinzi Africa Foundation, I'm trying to implement in joint sort of partnership with KWS, which is a Kenya Wildlife Service, an anti-poaching unit, which will have KWS rangers and community rangers complementing each other and supplementing each other's work, and hopefully trying to bring a level of protection and law enforcement for wildlife in that area. And also with the Walk with Rangers initiative, it's something that I started again in 2014. At that time, I just wanted to bring out the message about the challenges rangers are facing, because I'm sure you know at that time the rate of poaching was very high in Kenya.
Very, very high. And
the sort of narrative among what I call Nairobians was that rangers know where all the animals are, so lazima wanahusika na uwindaji. And that's not actually the case. Like, I know the dedication that rangers have to their work. They go up to 11 months without seeing their families, living here in the bush with no network, and they they really sacrifice a lot for the sake of protecting wildlife. Sometimes they have very little pay. Like I know rangers that are being paid 4,000 shillings a month. And out of that, yeah, they have to pay their children's school fees, they have to sort out their own food, their household, you know, expenses back home. And it's really, I don't think that they deserve that. I think they deserve much, much better because they do such an important job and it's such hard work, sometimes tracking between 15 to even 40 kilometers in a day. It's not easy at all. And I really wanted to change that. So I did the walk with rangers in 2014. We started in Arusha, Tanzania. We walked all the way to Nairobi, but not through Namanga. We walked through the bush, so following the Kilimanjaro and Kitenden corridor. And that took us 15 days. I had about 71 people who joined from all over the world. And they just helped us like pass on the message. And at that time, I never thought I'd have an organization of my own. I was quite happy just doing this and going back to working in the media, but something had to change, and we had an online fundraiser through which we bought an anti-poaching vehicle. And that's when I realized that actually maybe I do have the capacity to do something more for Tana River and also for rangers. And so we registered as a non-profit, and here we are today.
Wow. You spoke about the challenges that rangers face, and one of them is financial constraints. And yesterday you actually gifted me something, which is this bracelet over here, and really warmed my heart. Maybe you could tell us the history behind it.
So, I mean, it's a pilot project at the moment, so it's very small, but inshallah it'll pick up at some point. And basically what it is we're trying to find rangers' wives, so like the women folk in the rangers' actual households and families that work with handicrafts, so either basketry or bracelets like the one you're wearing, and they do all the beading work, and then I do the finishing, and we try and sell them, and that's how we are able to supplement the rangers' family with an additional source of income. But then also whatever surplus we get goes directly into our anti-poaching unit fund. So it's a small way to try and just change something.
The first thing that comes to our mind is the animal and maybe the people in very big positions, but we never actually think of the ranger on the ground. What is your take on that?
I agree fully. I do feel like rangers are largely ignored when decisions are made that affect wildlife and rangers and our work on the ground. No one consults rangers, and I think that needs to change. I believe that rangers' voices and their experiences should be and need to be shared on international platforms like CITES, the Conference on International Trade in Endangered Species, when they're discussing amongst countries and delegations of Kenya, South Africa, Namibia, and discussing whether to trade or not trade in ivory. There isn't even a committee for rangers where rangers can bring to that table how a trade in ivory is going to affect their lives and their work on the ground when they're losing their lives almost every other day for the sake of wildlife. So I do think that they are ignored, but hopefully we'll change that at some point.
Inshallah. Rabia, you're a Muslim lady who has dedicated her life to saving the animal, the wildlife in our country, Kenya, and Africa at large. How supportive has the Muslim community been in your venture?
Am I allowed to be brutally honest?
Yes, I want honesty here.
I would say in terms of sort of in-kind donations and financial support that we get, more than 90% is not from the Muslim community. I don't even think 2% would constitute support from the Muslim community, which has been very disappointing for me, to be honest, because it's our duty to protect the environment and to work to help wildlife and to save their lives. You know, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that any act of kindness to any living thing is an act of charity, and any living thing could be a tree, it's grass, it's snakes, it's birds, it's animals at large, but we seem to focus more on humanitarian issues. I've personally had people say to me, well, you know, it's not a children's project, it's not a women's project, so izo nigani. And I've been really disheartened by that actually, because I was so confident coming into it as a Muslim woman. I thought that I would get a lot of support from the Muslim community.
For sure.
But that hasn't been the case, sadly, and I don't know what more I can say about that other than it's very disappointing.
Well, what would you like to tell the Muslim community out there?
Just that maybe read the Quran and learn some hadith about animals that is related to animals and the environment. You can't really pick and choose what you want to follow and what you don't want to follow. And for me, whatever I learn about, I try and apply into my daily life as much as possible. And so if you learn about something, like for example, like today we're talking about this issue, maybe you didn't know as a Muslim that it's part of your duty to protect the environment or to conserve water. But once you learn that, then it's your responsibility to make those changes in your daily life and to try and do something about the situation. So I would say that's my message, is try and learn about what your responsibilities and duties are to the environment and animals in general as a Muslim. And just be kind to all living things. And I'd like to mention one thing in particular, because I see this a lot in my work in animal welfare, where Muslims are particularly very unkind to dogs. We have to remember that Allah created them as well, and there's a way that they've been created. They've been created to sniff, and there are ways that you can do a tahara after that. So if you can do a tahara with just soap and water, there's no reason for killing a dog. And I just think that when you take the life of something, you should really feel that responsibility, and that is a very heavy burden to bear. And at the end of the day, Allahu Malik, so He's going to ask, what did you or what didn't you do about this situation now that you have the knowledge of it.
How long do you see yourself doing this?
As long as I live.
When I Google your name, all that pops up is Rabia Hawa, the conservationist, and a lady who loves animals. What else do you do?
I mean, for me, my work it's serious, but I also get to see wildlife along the way, which is kind of what I would do for fun. So it's a bit of a two-in-one, really. Doing a job that you love, you don't feel like you've worked a day in your life. So, niko raha tu.
What are your final words to the public?
I would like to say that conservation for a long time has been seen as a very elitist thing, and Kenyans don't feel like they can be included in conservation. I felt that same feeling when I was in the media. I didn't think that Neza Penya, your root.
So could we just say that we have this this notion in our head that this is just a mzungu kind of a thing?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. But for me, yani roho ikipendelea kitu nenda tu mbele na uende na Mungu. That's what I have to say, like, because that's what I did. I just prayed, and I knew this is where I want to end up someday. And there were a lot of blockages and hurdles along the way, but people who didn't want me in that sphere. But I just pushed ahead. I just continued doing what I was doing, and
you made it. We're in the bush together.
Exactly, and now I'll recruit you.
Well, hopefully I may just shift from the media to this, but let's leave it in the hands of God. Thank you so much, Rabia, for gracing the Meet and Greet show, and we will meet in the next episode where we'll be talking about poaching, wildlife conservation, and of course rangers.
Okay.
Well, we have come to the end of the Meet and Greet show from the bush and beyond, but we will meet here next week, same place, same time. What a woman, what a story, and of course, what a lesson. I have been your host, Aisha Khan. Goodbye for now, and goodbye from the bush.
Everything I have, everything I own, everything I eat is thanks to you. Every breath I take, every bird I hear, every smile I see is thanks to you. Alhamdulillah.